We do the opening prayers in the yellow prayer book, starting on page 1. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation in our knowingness, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. And thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, and the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, and the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, and the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and the moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. To the lamas who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, and secret offerings. With my body, wealth, and all that is visible, please grant me the supreme realization, enlightenment. Om Guru Devata Kini Ratna Mandala Praditsa Soha. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Unequaled refuge, ornament of the world, your fame pervades the 3,000 worlds. You are the victor of Vajradhara without a doubt. I bow at the feet of the Father, Jigten Sumgan. Continually I think of no one but you. Compassionate One, grant your blessings. Dispel the darkness that surrounds my heart. Please bless me so that I realize the unelaborated nature of mind. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma, of the 2 vehicles and their combination, according to the dispositions and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings. So, my Dharma friends, we come to the practice text of the Great Compassionate One, the Avalokiteshvara Goesa Maja. So it begins with the title. It says, Cumulus Clouds of Compassion as Application to the Lineage of Mahakarunika Goesa Maja. And the first one, the Mahakarunika, this refers to great compassion. And then the Goesa Maja means the gathering of secrets. And so together it means that if one has great compassion, someone with great compassion embodies the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas of the three times. So within great compassion, the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas gather. So that is the meaning of this name. So on the outer level, on the relative outer level, there are countless Buddhas of the three times that have appeared. And then within the inner level, the mind is the same. The mind is love and compassion. And then the secret aspect of their mind is like space. No one can actually see that mind of love and compassion. But all the Buddhas gather within that single mind of love and compassion. So therefore, the compassion of a single Buddha gathers in the mind of all the Buddhas. So there's an outer, inner, and a secret aspect, just like a person has an outer, inner, and secret aspect. The outer aspect of the person is the person's body. The inner aspect of the person is the various thoughts in the mind and also one's speech. And then the secret aspect is the mind of the person, which is like space and nobody can see it. So it is like either like space, or it is like a vast ocean, or it is like light electricity. So it is like space because it is there, but nobody can actually see it. We cannot grasp it. It's intangible. So it is there like a lamp flame, like a fire flame that is clear. It is clearly here, but also it is empty. So therefore we say the essence of the mind is empty and the nature is clear, and secret because no one can see it. So within that mind, the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas gather. This mind, it is essentially the mind of love and compassion. According to the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says the perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So within this altruistic mind, all the Buddhas, the mind of all the Buddhas gather. So it is the mind of great compassion, or Mahakarunika. And so therefore whoever possesses great compassion, that mind embodies the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas. Within that mind, all the Buddhas gather. So for example, if you look inside your own mind and you find, for example, I have a sincere wish to benefit my country and the people in this country, and if you always have this wish, then you can recognize that this is an excellent intention. This is probably how all the Buddhas are thinking. And so that is the enlightened mind of the Buddhas. So the Buddha mind is the mind where one has cleared away the habitual tendencies of one's own suffering, and can more turn towards the suffering of others, be concerned about the well-being of others. So the Mahakarunika here represents this great compassion. So this is, the term itself is already very, very meaningful. So we should here understand that within this mind of great compassion, the mind of all the Buddhas gather.
내가 그 지질라고 말이야. 거기 하비리 야매. 이 대양 거기 이 로고도 전화들이 싸워는 거 말이야. 이 길을 나게 오 다티 나는 좀 남들 사연 출발하나 이상 말이야. 얘네들 독이 대해서 통사래서 대상들이 길아 이 길에들 사사 좋은 거지 남성 거지 시래 이렇게 때마다 길어가게 남성 같은 데서 저거 송진가 붙이 정말에 이 길에 야주하는 데 되게 랑가지하고 막 참을 때 봐야 다 들어가서는 그러나 차림 처방선나는 뭐 얘네들 라가 마치 강고에 담지 그래서 합 드럽에서 사바감이더니 문항원이더니 남도 빠진가도 요래 되게 통사에서 돼 빠져봐야 돼. 얘는 이제 진짜 최고들한테 남캐가 잡을더니 맞춰서 찍다요만 감성서 봤는데 남캐는 요래 대회들이 얘네들 hin게 체험에 hin게에서 이 대회는 사실 당시 hin지 나서 그래 이 바다에 야요래 이때라 이 손대기 요래 밤으로 그 하고 걸로 저저 기동가 봐서 그 상제동 하는 간데 때때 동바송으로 와 나 봐.
이 손나도 된다.
손대는 요 상말로
nanti langsung tilang.
예를 들면 앞에 책임에서 저리요래 남카다고 잡아 뛰어왔지 참이 고도 봐라.
Disco.
네, 이 남카다고 잡아 쭉쭉쭉 이제
Kawato
쭉쭉쭉
Sonda di kawato.
그런데 마그데스 저리요래
Kawato tambo.
이 내려 요즘 말에
Inga di lolayo iso mare.
Sonda tingala lo mendok.
요 말에 이 소리 같이 빠는데 로들 빠래 마그데 책임에서 저리요래
Inati.
이 제와지는 참을 오 나와도 때 고하러 봐. 진짜래. 이제 빠한테 좀 못되게 봐요. 빠한테 진짜 소식지가 아주 못되게 그랬지. 이제 와지는 되게 그랬지.
Jadi sonda ting angi koran sala lamna rawa. Kani ngal chuna ti hakku ge mendo sana sanala. Ni sik jorba tang song lamna. Tambo kare hakku rawa. Kare jorba tang song hakku da.
그리고 가는 카드 때때 또 와서 그러더라. 근데 나게 남카다고 잡아 제와지. 남카다고 잡아 제와지. 제와지 참에 하고 그러니까 남바이 민이라 하고 그래. 가는 카드 때때 또 받을 때다 하고 이래 보면 이제 받지네도 소한테
Tini di rangso.
Ngaten di party di
아무 어디 거 봐.
di party re. Di gila gila de. Ya ya.
동바디. 이제 동바디 또 동생으로 아무래도 봐도 좀 통통 오고 그러지. 기억 진짜 이거
Sonda
말이야.
haku song.
그래. 진짜 이거 말이야. 근데 나가서 봐야 잡아야
Tingaten di rawa. Arimi nangi party marwa.
아,
Arimi party show rawa. Ngaten di yo marwa. Song ngaten di.
그럼 좀 어디인데?
Ready haku song. Ngatibar bar haku.
아니 뭐그 좋아하는데 요 말이야.
Yamaro.
뭐그 좋아하는데. 그래. 그만 뭐 치고 들어가서 다다 하고 요러.
Haku song chinda ya.
So the great compassionate one, or the Mahakarunika, is one of Chenrezig's names. But then he is given different names. For example, in the new tantric system, in the Karmakagyu, he is referred to as the like the Gyarva Gyamtso, the ocean of Buddhas. And in the Nyingma, the old tantric system, this is the name here, Mahakarunika. And so it is still the same deity, the essence of the deity is the same. And that the body color and the implement and so on are the same. There is a difference in the number of hands. So in the new tantric system, the Gyarva Gyamtso, there is the 4-armed Chenrezig, and so this one here has 2 arms, the Mahakarunika, whereas Samaja has 2 arms. So that is really the only difference, and the difference comes about due to a slight subtlety in enlightened activity. But then the Dharmakaya nature is exactly the same. And then there is also an image of, in our 37 Bodhisattva Practices book, an image of the 1,000-eyed and 1,000-armed Chenrezig. This is according to the vision of Gelongma Palmo, who saw this 1,000-armed and 1,000-eyed Chenrezig. And as you mentioned also during the empowerment yesterday, the great compassionate one, Avalokiteshvara, is the essence of all the Buddhas, from which all the Buddhas arise, from great compassion. And also I mentioned yesterday that this particular practice of the Mahakarunika Guhyasamaja is also very dear to my own monastery. Uninterruptedly, from generation to generation, we have been practicing this lineage of Chenrezig in an unbroken lineage. And therefore also personally I have a single-pointed devotion to this particular practice and deity. And so, so how can we understand this, the appearance, the nature of this great compassionate one? For example, I have a personal experience. I'm actually a very sinful person, but even I actually saw Chenrezig in my dream. And the way in which he appeared in my dream is according to the image on the first page of our 37 Bodhisattva Practices book, with this 1,000-armed, this circle image. So one day I had this dream about this image, and so the way he appeared in this dream is pervading the entire universe. There was a dark night sky in the dream, and the sky was filled with stars. And I saw all these stars as the 1,000 eyes of Chenrezig. So the whole universe was pervaded by these eyes of Chenrezig. And so this is how his nature appeared to me in this dream. And then just about a week later or so, the next following week, at that time I was in Arizona at the Center in America. And so at that time there was a disciple, a local disciple. I didn't even know who it was actually, and so this disciple made a picture, like a picture, like in a computer designed, like a graphic designed image of Chenrezig, and he, like this size, quite big, and he, like an arm's length, and he posted it on our Arizona temple door. And when I saw it, it was exactly the same image that I've seen in my dream. But actually, I did not ask anybody to make it. I didn't tell anybody about it. But then suddenly it appeared on this temple door. And nobody has ever made that image like this before. So this is the image that I then placed into the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. And at that time, I thought probably the dream I had was not just a delusion, but maybe I saw a glimpse of Chenrezig's great compassion. And so then I used this image that this disciple made of the 1,000-armed Chenrezig in this circle, and in the center of it I put the face of the 1,000-armed Chenrezig that comes from an image that I took from the a self-arisen Chobu Chenrezig image that is endowed with like 5 qualities. And so that is a very special image that I've had a long time and that I always gave to my disciples. That comes from the time of the King Songtsen Gampo, who then installed this image or this statue of Chenrezig, the self-arisen Chenrezig. And so I took the image, the face of this Chenrezig, of this statue, and I put it in the center of this 1,000-armed Chenrezig circle image. And then together I put that in the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. So I felt that this dream was not just an delusion, but actually a great blessing by Chenrezig. And at a time when obscurations are reduced, then Chenrezig might appear in one's dream, because in the dream state, our thoughts, our ordinary thoughts, stop. When ordinary thoughts stop, in my case, I saw the form of Chenrezig, and then I made this image. And so this image really represents his nature and how he pervades the entire universe. There's actually nothing in the universe that is not pervaded by space. Space pervades all the 3 planes of existence, the 3 realms of samsara. They are all within this space, encompassed by the space. And wherever there is space, there is the great compassion of Chenrezig, or of all the Buddhas. And so therefore also there's this prayer supplication. It's similar to the one we have on page 14 at the closing prayer, where we prostrate to the 1,000-armed Chenrezig. And in the last line, in the normal prayer, it says, I prostrate to the Venerable Chenrezig, who shows whatever is needed to subdue those to be subdued. So this is the common prayer, but then I actually changed this line, this last line, whatever is needed to subdue those to be subdued, and I changed it to, I prostrate to the Venerable Chenrezig, the loving one, the one with great love, who pervades wherever there is space, pervades like space. So I changed this to love, because love is something that anybody can relate to, whether one is a Buddhist or not a Buddhist. So this is like the background of this picture in this booklet, and it is very precious to me.
아종선 맞도지 저와 삼체지마다 라마 교시 삼체를 로탑 제바 지콜라서 봐 첨보요래 그래서 고가 자라니 매와 대가 요바 내가 맞은 소주 카소 못 봐 어제 누구요 봐 이거 윤도 쳤어 봐 가리고 아 라베 초가지 봐 미치는 미쳤지 봐 내야 못 탔나 사도 콜로 저 보통 저로zon데 대양 못하면 지네도 이렇게 나가갈 때도 요때 오만은 비비요 지네도 신이 찾지나 그래서 나 도쿄에 빼나 대다가 유대 체르트 봐지 오감 잡았던 게 뉴리 땅은 누구 저어지 아예 상행게 되게 봐 시송처럼 그는 나와요 말해서 이제 체르트 봐서
So this man da war sorry.
I think,
oh no, thank you. Also this abridged essence, do I have a different text? Is there a different text? Oh, sorry, Rinpoche is already on page 5. Okay. Yeah, this is correct.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. 이렇게 다 틀렸냐면 이제 장창 나와래서 장호래서 그만큼 양도 로도 양고 저래 니들이랑 저들끼리 양도 이렇게 말해 그런 돈을 지내도 이렇게 통고 그래 칸에 5만 원 비면 홍대나 대외에 들이다가 무슨 양들을 볼까 느끼는 가상 거리 저쪽에 동료들은 자와서들 가서다 솔직히 저쪽에 태인데 나들이 매도비만 하정 치고 이 매도비만 치고도 되나 이 자와서다 조금 고좀 참아 있으면 사제 성게 또 지내지 말라 이 있으면 사제 성게 기본도 빠져도 될 나팔이 요요사 이 저들이라가 배동 총총 양지적으로 보나 어디나 자창 요지 이 저건 남각하면 좋대요. 남각도 매도 제보요. 남각하고 요. 통통랑 소식지도 같은 가장 요소. 이런 거래.
So we are on page 5, and the actual beginning of the sadhana. It says the abridged essence, that is a daily practice of Mahakarnika Goesam Macha. The abridged essence and the daily practice is that there is a more elaborated version. So this is like the abridged version. For example, for a powerful, great bodhisattvas like His Holiness Dalai Lama or any other spiritual masters, they often engage the practice of a more elaborate of the sadhana and a greater mandala. But for many of us who do not have much opportunity to practice, but who do have a lot of devotion, but who have a lot of other daily things to do, like a job and so on. For us, we need to rely on more an abridged version of daily practice because we do not have the time to engage in elaborate practices. So this is like an abridged version, a short version to engage in practice for those who wish to engage in practice on an ongoing basis. Ideally, you can read the sadhana, or even if you have not time even to reach that, you can just bring to mind the thousand-armed, thousand-eyed Chenrezig and think of Chenrezig, think that he's pervading space. And if you cannot even do that, just think of Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, or just bring him to mind in general, and especially the nature of his mind, which is great compassion. So for as long as Chenrezig is within your mind, you receive his blessings. So what is most important is to grasp his mind, which is great love and compassion, and then your practice will be unmistaken. So if you are able to practice this sometimes, you could, for example, gather together with other disciples and practice it about maybe once a month or once a week all together, or at your own leisure whenever you have time. This is a very short text. So we can just bring to mind Chenrezig, think of Chenrezig, and recite Om Mani Padme Hum mantra if you do not have time to do the sadhana practice. And so then the practice begins. It says, upon a lotus flower, sun and moon at one's crown, one should imagine the three roots, divine assemblies, and every jewel that is a source of refuge. So upon a lotus flower above one's crown. So you can visualize this in two ways. First, you can think the lotus flower is very large, pervading space, and above that are the three roots and the divine assembly. So there's the three roots and the three jewels, the three kayas, all the Buddhas of the three times. In the center is the principal deity, Chenrezig, and then all these other Buddhas surround him like massing clouds. So sometimes you can visualize like that, or you can also visualize a small lotus flower above your crown, which is directly above your crown and upon which also are the three roots divine assembly. So you can either think that it pervades the entire space, or that this flower is small and right above your crown.
오, 토르들이 싸우는 감이 연구예요. 그때 저도 가대요나 들이 좋아하는 연구요. 니들이 사지 거성 연구들이 하고 그래. 사지 거성 연구들이 뭐 죽것이 봐도 죽것 남았다 어디. 이것도 이제 사지의 상지 딱 타대매 봐. 다른 사지의 상지요. 그냥 나서다고 상지의 송어요. 저 특과지 장소 집에는 특도나 남부 잡아지 이제 보면 여기 저도 잡아차도 이요 말이 얘네 양자 저여서 마들이 저 마모요 저 남부 잡아요 거를 사이 초롱자마다 요래 마모요 망고 요자도 뭐 잡아지네 죽어 남가다가 차이가 롱거 자초다가 서거들이라는 공주제라는 대바이오라야 홍도 대바고 봐요. 호르트들이 대화랑 사용을 롱그자 좋은다고 아니면 사용을 공업에 마도버서 지난데 대화 치고요. 대화로 또버서 사용을 해. 그거 잡아다 어디더니 무저들이 지내서 어디다 나가다고 딱고 나가대요. 나가대고 내 요나요 조금 연구요. 양초 땡당 샤르바 숨처에 잡아다고 가지는 것들이 사지 좀 뒤인데 주적으로 거기 이렇게 시합이고 도서 지내서 며칠이요. 집밖 갈지는 양파랑 그래서 집밖 갈지 지내는 거 봐라. 내것이 진지든 거 봐야 보도 집에서 내려오더니 여러 사지 좀 뒤인데 시합이도 사지 좀 뒤인데 때리는 요 근데 저한테 사지 좀 뒤인데 저게 자리법에 지내들었어. 지내들 지라는 거 도시에 사지 좀 뒤인데 선다 지내들 선지 쪽 하는데 사지 어떻게 해야 돼. 근데 나보고 대답을 좀 보여요. 사지 좀 뒤인데 그 추송했지. 지내들 살아도 저도 주셔 와 보지는 뭐잖아 요래. 예외도 사제시 봐도 다 응보를 요리해서 먹는 요 말이 있으면 대 말이에요. 어떤 물린다면서 쪼까지 다도마다 니가 냠대 요리했지. 다도마다 니가 냠대 요리. 다도마다 제발 가려야 돼. 난지 최종 거예요. 사제 좀 받으면 인지 최고 요리. 유가 최고 요리. 내 막창 돌리다면 나디 최고 세당 최고 요리. 이만 것들이 막차 쌈통나도 내 생각 뭐 나다는 참아 상제에 내가 마다 마다인데 마도가 생기다 또 마음이가 민이지 들자 달라마다고 들자 시기 나서다 같은지 들고요 내가 말해봐 이 소식으로 사주 생기들 소소한 상제 차로 요래 어떤 이유 말이지 상제 생기 이유 말이 내가 내 박차 쌈통이면 이 사제들이 꽃을 용띠, 조금 용띠들이 희송나? 그러니까, 간다 싸워는 요 말이에요. 대통령 싸워는 요 말. 오, 나소탄데 내가 내 박차 토방마도, 노아를 생기, 삼지 사제가 저래. 상집에다 됐더니, 롱거든 야소다고 촬영 거래. 조금 늦게 가면 지내서 패고 그래. 다다 요리 먹어봐나 요리. 너네들이, 이네들 무엇들이 자와서 지지 말래. 이네들, 간도 롱이나 탐색이 좀 요래. 가리서 버려야 되나? 오, 가와끼는 동나 쳐보, 세강 쳐보, 녀몽 쳐보, 이때 들어와서 끼네도 봐도 이는 덜마터라. 이 산지 종지들 그 망발 후 가와끼인데 끼네도 그냥 닦고 자고 어제 까판. 이 주자매 원났던 renpa이제들이 보고 정말 보고 고치들 끼네들 무슨 백회요. 산지 종지들 까는 데 다다 달라마 끼네들 애들. 롱을 봐가 정렬해. 내가 잘안 누구 시죠 말이에요. 단지 핀이들 지네들 럭럭 요래지라. 사실 좀 니들 사과리 되는데 그거는 나버리나 랑도가 맥세 dim대가 람동 나버리는 다다들이 배봤을 때가 다 럭럭 요래 무슨 지네들 레서 나서 어디 지네들 나 무슨 배우는데 따라들 잡아 계속요 말이 대답을 하는데 너는 지내지 그래 로주도 그는 다 지내주라가 간고라 대답 용토고 요래지 지네도 포대 죽으려 사지도 저기 죽고 놓고 죽고 쓰는지 하고 그래 이 하고는 때문에 남에게로 무슨 요리 대통 매화가 되는 속에 쏘았다 봐라 대통 매화 연구 요래지
And so when we first begin to practice as beginning practitioners, many questions will be raised in the beginning, so we encounter some difficulties. And so when we supplicate Chenrezig and then Chenrezig appears, so one might wonder first of all, where actually does he come from and where does he usually stay? And so for that it is important to understand the nature of the three kayas, the Buddha's three kayas. And we understand that, and we also know the nature of Chenrezig and how he appears. So the ultimate nature is the Dharmakaya of all the Buddhas, and the Dharmakaya abides like space. And within that nature, the space like Dharmakaya nature, all the Buddhas of these three times are complete. And within that nature, they are not separate, they're neither one nor many, nor separate from each other. So once one attains enlightenment, it is like pouring a drop of water into the ocean, or like when rain falls into the ocean, it all becomes one. There is no more duality. The more drops fall into the ocean, the more water there is in the ocean. But the water is never separate from each other. It just becomes more, but it doesn't. It's not separate. There's no separate waters. Although water appears in different ways, for example, there's the rainwater, and then there's the rivers and the ocean, and different forms of water sources. But the essence of it always remains the same. It is still water. And that is just like the space-like nature of the Dharmakaya. It is the same in all the Buddhas. They have the same essence. And so when we give rise to devotion, then the deity, from our devotion and from the deity's great love, the deity appears as a Bogakaya appearing like a rainbow in the sky. it appears out of great love for those sentient beings who have not realized the nature of mind, who are still impure. So when the deity appears, it appears out of great love. That's the power that makes it appear. And then also it appears in the form of the Nirmanakaya. For example, Chenrezig not only appears as a Bogakaya deity, but also appears as a Nirmanakaya, also appears in this world as a human being, for example. But at the same time, his mind always pervades like space. So the nature of that is always the same, whether it is ocean water or it is a cloud or rain. Essentially, it is all the same by nature. So the ocean like Dharmakaya, the cloud like Sambhogakaya, the rain like Nirmanakaya, all have the same essence. And so how does the Buddha appear in different ways? For example, when the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, at some point he gave he turned the wheel of Dharma to an assembly of the 8 close Bodhisattva disciples, who then actually also had the same mind like the Buddha, but then appeared in different ways, in different emanations. For example, when the Buddha taught the Heart Sutra in the assembly of Chenrezig and Vajrapani and so on, and then his disciple Shariputra. So at that time, the Buddha rested in a state of samadhi. And while the Buddha was resting in a state of samadhi, then the disciple Shariputra asked the Bodhisattva Chenrezig to request the teaching on the Heart Sutra. And so then Chenrezig taught the Heart Sutra, and that teaching was the mind of the Buddha himself. So then it appeared to Shariputra that the mind of the Buddha, who was abiding in samadhi, and the mind of Chenrezig, who explained the Heart Sutra, was the same. So at that time, in this context of teaching the Heart Sutra, there was the Buddha, and there was the Bodhisattvas like Vajrapani and so on, and the disciples like Shariputra, which appeared just like Shariputra appeared just like a normal human being who is receiving the teachings, where Chenrezig first appeared as a disciple of the Buddha. So just like a disciple, like a human being, for example, and not necessarily as a Sambhogakaya form. So that is to show us also that the Buddha is not so far away. We think the Buddha is so far away and nowhere where we can see them. But it is really not true. The Buddha also appears in the human world as a Nirmanakaya. And in the Nirmanakaya world, there are impure and pure aspects of Nirmanakaya. And the only difference between them is whether or not there is self-grasping in their mind. And so due to self-grasping and various karmic imprints in our mind, anger and so on, we appear as impure sentient beings. But that is the only difference. There's only a difference in either thin or thick obscurations in one's mind. But ultimately, all beings' mind is the essence of the Buddha. So the difference is just that between a ripened or unripened, or having realized or not having realized the nature of mind. And so that is what marks the difference between those who tame and those to be tamed. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and us disciples. We all appear as human beings. And therefore, if we, having the same potential, if we give rise to bodhicitta, then we attain enlightenment. And when we attain enlightenment, we realize that ultimately we do not exist separately. There is no duality. So when you really understand the qualities of the Nirmanakaya, then that clears away all contradictions and all doubts. So we understand then that we all possess Buddha nature, all beings in the 6 realms, and only temporarily we are controlled by various karmas and afflictions, which makes us appear separately, but our true nature is Buddha nature. And so when the deity appears, like Chenrezig appears either like a rainbow as a Sambhogakaya deity, but also Chenrezig directly appears in this world, this human world, for example. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example, is a real emanation, a real appearance of Chenrezig in this world. And that actually was also foretold by the Buddha himself in the scriptures. There is, for example, a prophecy where it says that he will appear in the future in the snowy land of Tibet, where beings suffering like hatred and afflictions are particularly coarse. And only Chenrezig will be able to tame those beings. So Chenrezig then will appear in the land of Tibet. The Buddha actually entrusted Chenrezig to care for the people of Tibet. And in the future, then the various Dharma kings who appeared in Tibet were said to be all emanations of Chenrezig. That was the actual word of the Buddha. And so therefore also His Holiness the Dalai Lama is an actual emanation of Chenrezig. And so actually this is not just saying words of praise, but really, he really is actually an emanation of Chenrezig. And there is no higher way in which Chenrezig could appear in this human world. Because His Holiness appears in this world and his activities are even greater than the Buddha's activities. All over the world he's opening the eyes of karma, shows them the path of karma, and accomplishes much benefit and happiness of all the people in the world. So he really is an embodiment of Chenrezig. So Chenrezig has actually appeared in this human world. So in this way we can understand how the Nirmanakaya Chenrezig actually appears in this world. So again, ultimately in the ultimate nature of Dharmakaya, we are all the same. All the deities, all the Buddhas are the same. And then from this expanse appear the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakayas. So if we understand the qualities of the three kayas, then there will be no doubt in our mind when we supplicate to the deity.
그래서 다 때문에 고조 참제서 밤에 소리에 로와나 이 생계에서 로그 좀 보고요. 생계에서 우구선들요 말해서 얘는 이 감리들 다다 고소 왕쇼가 감리 이러면 제와요 그 메상게 바 그럼 그냥 찾아 주메라서 와서 왕쇼요. 어떻게 땅이 매직 무슨 면이 바 그런 거 땅이 그렇다. 어쩌서 잡히요 그래서 잡히요 때 하장 약보래. 랑그 찌아고 가는 거 때다. 랑그들 이등이들 찌아 가래요. 어때 따로 감성 생긴데 이제 파만 이디모디 직장이 오 말이 차마 뒤에다 그래. 서로들 로그 좀 쳐고요. 로그 좀 남도 잡쇼요. 왕쇼나 가게다 가래서 그래서 남도 제고요. 사람들이 이 빙도 소소로 터고요. 고소나 빙거요. 아니 이거 빙거요. 이 감성 생긴 남도요. 참 무슨 급에 되게요. 육급에 사자 마급에 소데 이것들이 대바세 좀 해봐 대바라더니 다가 대바 고쳐고 용띠 대바 대바랑 23세 동네를 탄도 이쪽에 대바더니 이제 상촉 첨제 랑 잡다봐 내가 타촉 탐제를 잡다봐 대이지 준비지 지지 대바 성분은 또 준비를 있지 상촉성이 있지 제거래 어 상촉성은 우리랑 똑똑하고 이 인간랑 똑똑해요. 이제 대바성 쪽을 제거해.
And so then it says, with respectful three doors, wayfaring beings, with one's parents acting as their leader, should utter these words. So we should bring all this to mind. It says one should imagine. And so when we bring all this to mind, actually, although we are imagining it, we might think that we're just imagining it, it's not really there. But really it actually also happened the way we imagine it. For example, when we receive an empowerment, often people, for example, bring the picture of a loved one to also receive a blessing. Or they bring a picture of their pets, like their dog or their cat and so on. Or somebody who cannot actually be there. So they bring their picture, so we bless them, and then they really believe that the three jewels will protect those loved ones. And that is really true. They will really be protected through the power of love. So then at the same time, when we seek those blessings for loved ones, we should think that actually all sentient beings in the three realms are just like that. They all have been our parents and friends and relatives and so on. And then we can bring also that to mind. So if we can bring our loved ones to mind and receive a blessing this way, we can bring all sentient beings, we can imagine anything. And then also we have said before, when we receive an empowerment, we can also bring to mind that we all receive the empowerment together. And so that is a very beneficial way of thinking. It benefits oneself and also others, all sentient beings in the three realms. And so then it says, with respectful three doors. So with body, speech, and mind. When we pay respect with our body, then we, for example, we bow down, we make prostration, or we perform mudras, and so on. When we pay respect with our speech, we supplicate, we pray. When we pay respect with our mind, we cultivate faith, or devotion. And there is three types of faith to cultivate. There is the clear faith, which is to remember the qualities of the three jewels. And then there is the longing faith, that is to wish for the liberation of suffering for others and oneself. And then there is the trusting faith, which is to trust in bodhicitta, to trust that bodhicitta is one's temporary and ultimate protection. So it is basically to trust in karma. And so therefore this trusting faith is the most important one of the three types of faith. It is in essence to trust in bodhicitta. To know that if I give rise to bodhicitta, then I will first of all protect myself, and also I will be able to protect others. So of these three types of faith, and this is the most important one.
축구는 로고 텔레카로가 사상의 랑게를 보나 차대요래 라그센터 랑게센도 레와요 와시나 오 라그를 받아서 밀려 사샤대요래 다 사샤와지 에 랑게를 거사 랑을 예매바래 라를 살아서 오 랑게를 받아 산도 또 하고 이 참사와는 초래 망가랑 자기 방법 몸 잡으면 남도 간살 성제 나쁘면 보자 잡초가 쳐다라기도 파도로 에 저런 망가랑 잘 주고 주고 잡지는 좋대 넘지 동안 털로샤 이천 라고 따와 제라들이 딱신 타지 그마 죄송해요 요네 아제 제라서 멀게 딱신 멀게 가시 그 세요 사기 매 가시 따와요 가시 제발 제라서 생 죄송해봐 선들 랑가를 자기한테 랑지고 딱고 타던 들어와 노동바 제법 타던 들어와 랑지살이 시도 너는 멀지도 딱시는데 오요래 이 세고 딱봐야만 제봐야만 라와 심자를 맞게 자라 얘를 제일들이 대성람을 했잖아 대샤고래 대성람을 했대 남도를 파샤 자과 초래 몇개 동안 털어샤서 무슨 년이 지랑 세계 내려온다라 대봐야한테 마음봐야한테 다다한테 미성스러운 노동사원 뭐 송야용아 혼자왔다와요 말이야 사지 살려는 생기고 내려 통화된 좋았다와요 말이야 그거 돌진 장 보절을 매봐야 무슨 명이 지랑 오타지 타마 지식이랑 대답에 까와초대 저 지식이랑 있잖아 이 책에서 사타와 주방바와 대파시아파 지식이랑 대 이게서 따와를 물랑을 철창을 파르고 말 따와랑 이렇게 참여를 공략.
And so then it begins with refuge. All sentient wayfarers and myself, with respectful three doors, take refuge in the Guru, Yidam, and three jewels with the victor's oceanic hosts. So that is very clear, and we will move right on because we don't have so much time. What is more important actually is what follows, the ultimate 7 branches. and how the deity is actually, the actual deity is within one's own mind. So the first branch says, homage to the deity, innate awareness. So that is the ultimate homage or prostration. So it is when the mind is free of dualistic grasping, then that nature itself is the deity. One's own innate awareness is inseparable, indivisible with the deity. So the actual ultimate, the Dharmakaya nature of the deity is actually one's own awareness, one's own innate awareness, and does not exist anywhere separate from that. So recognizing that one's own innate awareness is the supreme form of prostration or homage. So homage to the deity, innate awareness, which is innate awareness. And then secondly, offering, I offer unhalting innate clarity. This one, I offer unhalting innate clarity. So that is the ultimate offering. So it is that when whatever arises, you let go of whatever thought arises within a state of meditation. You don't follow any thought. And if no thought is pursued, the thoughts will naturally dissolve back into the mind, just like a wave dissolves back into the ocean. And that is the dissolving happens through the clarity of mind. And that is the most supreme offering. And then third, and disclose and let go of the four limits downfalls. So that is the ultimate confession. Within the view, within the nature of the mind itself is free from, it says, the four limits downfalls, which the four limits downfalls gather within the views of eternalism or nihilism. And that letting go of the four limit downfalls is to become free of all doubts regarding the nature of the mind. So it is to whatever arises, you let it settle in its natural state without investigating it. You let the mind be as it is. So some people say, when they talk about the mind, they talk about it in terms of existing. It is an existing thing, or non-existing. So either eternalism or nihilism. And so when you realize the empty essence of the mind, that clears away this extreme of eternalism. And when you see the clarity of the mind, that clears away the extreme of nihilism. So letting go of all these fixations, all this conceptualization, when the mind simply rests in its natural state and is free of any doubts regarding its nature, that is the supreme confession, when all doubts and all thoughts naturally settle in their natural place. And then in the 3 times sameness, I rejoice. So the 3 times, the past, present, and the future, past, present, and the future are equal within the natural state of the mind. There's no distinction. So this means even if thousands of years in the lower realms pass by, the mind has not changed in the slightest. And even when we attain the state of enlightenment and see the nature of the mind, it still remains as it is, and it has not changed in any way. It is still the same space-like expanse of Dharmakaya. So to recognize the sameness of the mind, that is the supreme rejoicing. It is to rejoice in the ultimate view, the equal nature of the mind. So these are the first ultimate branches, the homage, the offering, the confession, and the rejoicing. And so it shows us that when we meditate, within a state of meditation, all these are complete within the nature of the mind. And these are not directed to any outer objects, but they are all complete within one's own mind.
인지 또 그것이 기타게 다디 메발차네. 인지 저 소소를 안 하는 게 되게 뭐 감세하고 요래 작업을 하는 게 저서로 좋아하나지. 대신 뭐 하는 것도 없고 되는 코가 통해도 문이 코가 요 말이지. 가다서 살지 말죠. 아. 생코라가 라시티 가지는 까다들. 이제는 까리 닦아라. 당만이 생도 닦아야지. 내가 로를 들이 니디 나기 니디는 지금 코라도 내가 저기래 전처럼 내가 저기를 맞아. 이제는 닦아야지. 상탈을 들이 뭐 톡톡이 말. 이 진짜 상탈 맞는 거 낙하들 가서 톡톡 말이지. 생코라가 라시티. 낙하 똥만하지 똥무시. 가다 상탈이 진발이죠. 얘는 소주처럼 냠이 제가 감이 상탈들 감에 참 싸워 하자고 바라고 실을 검자고 감이 남도 이거 뭐 가리를 톡톡을 말아 이거 미라고 그래. 매집을 가해. 이 무슨 참아 책송만 아기들이 야물이 쳐 차위는 건 처럼 돼 맞아 봐는 게 여랑살 나도 톡밤이다. 역도 거로 가다 상탈이 진발이죠. 군정라를 똑바로 먹어도 대답을 막또 생기 통제 너도 또나 아무튼 콜라면 없지 군정라를 똑바로 무슨 놈도 똑바로 줘 내다고 따와서 또 소속을 셈 되더니 사실 것은 어디 상고요 가려야 돼 선지 오 동바지 추가 동바지 하고랑 인사비 시지 오 동바 동장만이 오 생 동바리 그냥 맞아 사람이 하고 이 사람들이 롱거 되려고 그랬어. 싹동 니하고 뭐라 이게 된 나카다고 너는 동들면 맞잡사요 말이 나크가 저로 세도 검잡고 잡대요. 이 셈 나카다고 뭐 하고 죽어 하고 그래서 문화에 대해서 많이 고소용도 도발하고 랑그 셈들이 사실 고소용이 상와 하고를 줘서 뭐나 네 하자도 아치모리 이나도 맞아 동다고 이나도 맞아 아치모리
So then these 7 limbs actually are the antidote to the 6 afflictions, and so these here are the ultimate 7 limbs. And so the next line then says, I exhort you to empty samsara from its steps. So that is when you have realized the view, the nature of your mind, and you give rise to great compassion to sentient beings, and through the power of your compassion, the self-grasping of sentient beings melts, and their Buddha nature opens up and reveals itself. It is like the ice block is melting, and that is what stirs samsara from its steps. It means that when one realizes the nature of the mind, one realizes that samsara actually does not really exist inherently. And then, I request you to remain in primordial purity's naked transparency. So the request to remain from the ultimate level. The remain in primordial purity. The primordial purity is the actual nature of the mind that is primordially pure. To begin with, it is always pure. Only temporarily, due to various conditions, we perceive this duality of self and others, which creates samsara. So for the time being, our mind is like ice, but its nature is still water, so primordially pure. And then this term naked transparency, this term transparency here means that it is unobstructed, it is all penetrating. The nature of the mind is all penetrating like space, unobstructedly. Because the nature of the mind is empty primordial awareness. So from a practical perspective, how we can understand transparency is that when you recognize your own innate awareness with great clarity, you see yourself with great luminosity, great clarity. And when you abide within the state of seeing yourself with great clarity, and whatever arises within that, whatever thought and so on arises within this nature, it will naturally dissolve. unobstructedly, upon arising immediately. For example, you have a very large fire. The moment you throw some wood into it, immediately it's burned away. Or you have some hot water and you put some ice in there, immediately it melts. So the moment a thought arises, immediately it is liberated in this state of transparency. And so then, next it says, I dedicate everything to realize innate awareness. So that is to dedicate for all those unrealized sentient beings to realize innate awareness. Because once one has realized the nature of mind, one realizes that samsara does not really exist. And then it says, may the fully complete three kayas be attained. So that is to realize that the three kayas are actually complete within one's own mind. And how they are complete, the essence of the mind is empty. This empty essence is the Dharmakaya nature. And then there is a clear knowing, awareness that naturally knows its own empty nature. It knows its empty nature. There's a knowing consciousness within this empty nature. So it is not just empty blankness, but actually there is a clear knowing awareness that knows its own nature is empty. And so it is empty and vibrantly clear. And from this clear quality, the Sambhogakaya emerges. So therefore we say the nature of the mind is this union of clarity and emptiness like space. So it is like space as it cannot be said to be this or that, existing or non-existing. But it is everywhere, and wherever there is space, and there is no place where there is no space. So wherever there is space, there is the mind. Milarepa also said the mind is like space. The mind is not different than space. So that's how the three kayas are actually complete within one's mind. So this is a prayer that may beings realize how the three kayas are complete within their own mind. So these are the ultimate 7 limbs, the 7 limbs from the ultimate level, and this particular 7-limb prayer is therefore very precious. And so then the next lines are the 4 immeasurables. So it says, alas, for me to release all sentient ones by emptying samsara into the great compassionate one's mandala, I will rouse mind the four immeasurables. So often the question arises that when we say that your mind is actually the Buddha, so then the question arises if my mind is actually the Buddha, then why do I need to seek refuge in the three jewels? Why do I need to practice and so on? Of course, people are not to blame, not to be blamed for asking such a question. We need to understand how our mind really is the Buddha. So it is true, your mind is really actually the Buddha by nature. However, also you grasp at a self in your mind. So your mind actually is water. But due to self-grasping, it has become like ice in water. But it's still water. So what is that you are lacking? What you are lacking is altruism. And therefore, we need to supplicate, we need to put our hopes, our requests into the Buddha, into the Yidam deity. Because we want to get their compassion, Chenrezig's or the Buddha's great compassion. So for the time being, at the time when we are eyes, the eyes needs some help. The eyes needs the sun, or the eyes needs hot water. So therefore we put our hope into the Buddha, so we can get the warmth of their compassion, so the eyes can melt. And so then when their compassion arises within our mind, then we become liberated. And then we realize that our mind is actually the Buddha. So the four immeasurables, first there is the immeasurable love, and immeasurable love is all-encompassing love. So for example, you bring to mind anyone that you love, and then you think that there is not a single being that has not been my parent or my friend and so on. And therefore, it is difficult to make a distinction between enemies and friends. So that is immeasurable love. You love everyone. And then second is the immeasurable compassion, and that is that since you love everyone, and you cannot really make a distinction between enemies and friends, and now especially those around you, if they encounter difficulties, whether they are like your enemies or friends, if they encounter difficulties because you love them all, you also want to help them. So if you want to help everyone, it is a boundless compassion, immeasurable compassion. So it is the wish to help others, if you can, anyone, any being, any life form, like an animal, with or without a body. Also beings without bodies suffer. And so then how can we help them? How can we protect them? It is by cultivating love and compassion. Through our love, their self-grasping will diminish. And then after they have died, we can actually protect them. So that's the boundless compassion. And then the boundless joy or immeasurable joy is to realize that by nature, all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. That's their ultimate nature. And because they possess this quality of mind, they can become liberated. So knowing that is immeasurable joy. And then immeasurable equanimity is to realize that there is no distinction between us. On the ultimate level, Buddhas and sentient beings, all sentient beings are indivisible.
앞에 많이 다들 트레인 탑란데 때문에 혹시 선진을 피고 something hinge데 남도 오늘 선진 피고 something hinge데 계속 받지고 hinge 그쪽 맞에 제르더니 hinge 기마타도 다 선데 hinge데 내 두고 말이지 내보다 쉬어야돼 오 hinge 가지는 람산 이게 셔도 저 트레인 hinge 네 두고 요래 그래서 어제 니만나 제 양도 상황도 이 레이트를 다 책다 리 레이트 와제데 고조로 대바지고 고조로 대바지 와서 제런춘에 이 소리는 감독은 주바퍼리오스 그리고 저를 레리티를 드린 주바를 한번 봐도니까 주바퍼리오스 이셀 로아를 놀라 니마고 야 참도 마 참도 그래 로아를 놀라 대와고 되게 참고 거서 나디 매바드네 그저기라더니 거서 스바티 못 차서 내일 뒤또 되게 삼휘지 또 되게들이 랑 상황때 말은 전부 무릎다를 타는데 무릎에 가리 이때와지 또 되게들이랑 자롱 쇼하고 요래 나니 총들도 오요래 허바 동네 똑바로 쌍쌍 이 샘지 탐지 헛 자롱 쳐서 좋아하는 게 이제 동지쯤을 거리 저기요 쌍 그리고 고바도는 또 쌍 대니 용절 대니 용절 저발라니 상황도 그렇게 다다 다 토탈라이 거들 따라들이 좀 거기 이래서 이 공부를 좀 거기서 일이 연구를
And so then we go to page 6, and that is where the actual creation stage, the visualization of the deity begins. First it says, from the state of emptiness without reference point is a sphere of 5 colored lights in the center of a palace. Therein, on a seat of lotus, sun, and moon, is innate awareness, a red trisyllable. So first you begin by meditating within a state of emptiness. So first you meditate and let all thoughts go. Do not entertain the past or anticipate the future. You let all thoughts go and clear the mind completely into a state of emptiness. And then from within that state of emptiness then arises the seed of lotus, sun, and moon, and so on. So if you can visualize all that, then that is excellent. Or you can actually just think, may all sentient beings be benefited. So from within the state of emptiness, you give rise to a mind of compassion for all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be benefited. But then we are not able to sustain the state of compassion, of thinking of compassion all the time. So therefore, we transform this thought of compassion into the syllable Shri, the red Shri syllable. So compassion arises, and the instant compassion arises, transform this mind, think that this mind of compassion becomes the syllable Shri, the moment it arises. And the Shri then becomes your reference point, your support of visualization, of abiding, single-pointed abiding. And then it says, radiating outward, its light has made pleasing offerings to the victors and has refined away all sentient ones' wrongs and obscurations. As it gathers back, accomplishments merge into me. I imagine samsara has been emptied from its depths. So then light is radiating from this Shri syllable, just like the sun rays shining. And so when the light radiates, first it pervades all the Pure Lands of the 10 directions, and it makes offerings of devotion there. So here the nature of these light rays is devotion to the 3 jewels. And then think that from the tip of each light ray appear countless offering goddesses that make countless offerings to those Buddhas in the Pure Lands. And then the light gathers back, and again the light, it radiates, and it pervades now with love. And now the light has the nature of love. And then this love light pervades all the 6 realms of samsara, all the sentient beings, and it clears away their self-grasping. And the moment they are touched by the light of love, their minds become happy. So through the power of love and compassion, of the great compassionate one, the self-grasping and the suffering of all sentient beings melts away, just like ice melting away. So that is the accomplishment. It says, accomplishments merge into me. So that is the accomplishment. The power of love has cleared away all self-grasping. And once self-grasping has cleared away, think that all sentient beings have become the nature of Chenrezig. Then it says, through the transformation of the Shri, I become the form of Guya Samaja, red with 1 face and 2 arms. the right hand holds a lotus garland at the heart, and so on. So then you come to the actual visualization of yourself as the deity. So as before, you can take the image of the deity, the picture, look at the picture, and then close your eyes and have that appear in your mind. So then we visualize, as it says here, the form of the deity with all its ornaments and color and so on. Have this image appear clear in your mind. So first have this image of Chenrezig appear in your mind, and then later you can elaborate on that by visualizing the various parts, like the ornaments and implements and so on. And so then when you visualize those parts later on, then we come to remembering the purity. So first we just visualize clearly, and then we remember the purity, that each of these elements, these parts of the deity, represent some pure quality, like the 6 parameters and so on of the deity, or the transformation of the 5 afflictions into the 5 wisdoms. So the Vajrayana is understood, or should be understood, in 3 ways. that is, first, you should understand the signs, the symbols, the signs, and the meaning. So those three. Or also we can call it the outer, inner, and the secret. So for example, there is the outer symbol, the symbolic. For example, you have the crown ornament of 5 Dhyani Buddhas. That is the symbol. And then the inner of that, the inner meaning, which is the sign, is that it's symbolized, that it shows, it is a sign of having transformed the 5 afflictions into the 5 wisdoms. And then third, the secret level, or the actual meaning of that is that when the 5 afflictions transform into the 5 wisdoms, one realizes the non-dual nature of the mind. So that is what it actually represents. So for example, when we visualize a deity in Yap Yum, so this deity, for example, has a yum, a female consort. And the visualization of the consort is a special skillful means of the secret mantra. There are many deities that appear with a consort. For example, Chakasamvara or Samantabhadra. Many deities in a secret mantra have a consort. And so that is related to actually the 4 immeasurables, in particular love and compassion. So the 4 immeasurables actually the Yap Yum union shows us the nature of the 4 immeasurables. So first there is the immeasurable love. So when we look at the symbol of the Yap and the Yum, the consort, then it symbolizes love. There's love between them. So then secondly there is compassion. So through compassion we love one another. And then through compassion we connect to one another. So then there is this union between the Yap and the Yum. And then through this union of compassion, number 3 is the great joy, immeasurable joy. So this union creates great joy, immeasurable joy. And as a result of great joy, there's great equanimity. So in the end, one realizes non-duality, or great equanimity, immeasurable equanimity. So that is how the union or the 4 joys actually relate to the 4 immeasurables in stages. So when we practice the channels, winds, and drops, then this is how we practice the 4 immeasurables. So we recognize ultimately the nature of the mind. So the union is to realize the nature of the mind through the union of bliss and emptiness. So when bliss arises and we realize the empty nature of bliss, when we look at bliss, the essence of bliss is empty. And then when we recognize this empty nature of bliss, there's great clarity which recognizes the empty nature of bliss. And so therefore within bliss emptiness we find clarity. So these qualities arise from, therefore, first cultivating bodhicitta. And so in this sense, then, the bodhicitta drops become great qualities. If we do not give rise to bodhicitta, then these drops become the seeds of samsara. Because then, due to bliss, we become attached to one another. And attachment then leads to clinging to one another. And if we cling to one another, then we become jealous and so on. So it leads to samsara. So when we first have a friend, like a partner, and then we get angry and jealous, and then this friend actually becomes an enemy. And this is where all the suffering of samsara really comes from ultimately. So therefore, when we engage in practice, like at the Yap Yum, it is all on the basis of bodhicitta. So the way in which Yap Yum is really practiced is the stages of the 4 immeasurables, therefore. So we connect through the 4 immeasurables on the basis of bodhicitta. And so then also what the Yap and the Yum represent is the ultimate nature of the mind. So the mind is clear and empty. That is represented by the Yap and the Yum. So for beginning practitioners, when we visualize that, if you are a male, for example, it might come easier for you to see yourself as the male part, like Chenrezig. Or if you're a female, you can see yourself as Tara. Or the other way around, whichever way comes easy to you. And then you visualize like Tara or Chenrezig as your consort. This The yap and the yum, we have said, represent emptiness and clarity. So the clear aspect of the mind, the arising, appearing aspect of the mind, is represented by the yap, the male. But then all appearances do not inherently exist, they're empty. And so that emptiness aspect is represented by the yum, the female. Or when bliss arises, the bliss arising is the yap, the male, but then this bliss is actually empty, and that is the yum, the female. So normally, due to a dualistic perception, there seem to be two experiences, two feelings of bliss and emptiness, but actually they're not two things. They actually have a single essence. They are unity. So bliss is empty, and recognizing the empty bliss, we recognize clarity and emptiness. So there's clarity which recognizes the empty nature of bliss. So therefore we find clarity in bliss. So when you recognize the nature of the mind, you see that they are indivisible. The nature of clarity is emptiness. The nature of emptiness is clarity. The clarity aspect is the yap, the male, and the emptiness aspect is the yum, the female. And ultimately, always it all gathers into emptiness, the yum, the female. So everything is pervaded by emptiness ultimately. So ultimately, within the nature of the mind, there is no duality. So when you engage in union in this way, without any dualistic grasping or perception at all, recognizing the nature of bliss and emptiness, then actually the union becomes an enhancement to your realization of the nature of mind, the view. Then, as a result of that realization, the non-dual primordial wisdom will increase, will arise in your mind. So that's the reason, also the meaning of visualizing the yap and the yum. And that, for example, appears in the form of Chakra or any other deity in the secret mantra in the Vajrayana. And so, most importantly, what was shown to us now is that when we practice the yap and the yum, it is always practiced on the basis of love and compassion. So first there is love, which leads to the union of compassion, which leads to great joy, the bliss, and then that ultimately must lead to equanimity, to realizing the non-dual state of mind. So then we go to page 7. It says, thus should one cultivate pristine, non-dual unity. So when we cultivate this unity, like a state of equanimity, so when we practice like normal abiding, and the bliss arises from meditation, then that is an ordinary like meditative state of bliss, like that bliss of calm abiding or shamatha. And then if we become attached to that blissful state of shamatha, many faults come from that. So then one becomes ordinary. So the ordinary way of grasping bliss is one sees the bliss as being an external factor. So one thinks that bliss relies on someone else. So for example, we think that a man might think that his bliss depends on a woman and the other way around. So then, thinking that we are each other's sources of bliss, we become attached to one another and we cling to each other. And then we try to take ownership and possession of one another. And so many samsaric faults come from that. So when we meditate, on shamatha, for example, and the bliss of shamatha arises, and we become attached to this, we will end up not realizing the nature of mind. So there needs to be a clarity, the view of vipassana, the special insight. So this non-dual unity of shamatha and vipassana. So as a result of that only will we realize that the actual nature of the mind is blissful, and that bliss is only inherent within ourselves and is not found elsewhere. So only through the special insight of clarity can we realize non-duality, and only then dualistic grasping will fall apart. And so the skillful means of Vajrayana to realize that is the practice of the deity, the visualization of the deity. So we realize that the bliss is a quality inherent to our true nature. When we realize Mahamudra or Dzogchen, we realize that the bliss that arises is the bliss of seeing the nature of our mind. And that is the bliss of freedom that is not controlled by any other external force. It is the bliss of non-duality, which is like space. So you realize that the nature of mind is like space, and within that there is no other from whom we receive any kind of bliss. And so then we become liberated from the clinging to the pleasures of samsara. So that's the special quality of the Vajrayana and the meaning of why we visualize, we practice the deity in a yabiyom aspect. And so we really have to gain an experience of that. We must gain a practical experience. Otherwise, we cannot really understand its meaning. If we do not gain experience, and if we engage in this practice of like union and become attached to bliss, if we break our samayas and so on, then we will fall into the lower realms, like the hell realm, due to the dualistic grasping. So that which really determines which way we go is whether or not there is a dualistic perception or grasping in our mind. So realizing this pristine non-dual unity is to realize that there is no self and there is no other. So we must realize that our own mind is like space, that there is no self and other. Self and others do not exist. And so when we realize that, we see that there only are two different bodies. There's only a duality in forms, but there's no duality in the mind. It is just like a tree. There's one trunk, but there's different branches. So there's a duality in branches, but there's no duality in the trunk. And so if you realize that, you become liberated from the clinging to the pleasures of samsara.
네, 방한 그렇게 똑같은 다음에 좀 볼게요. 나와 이 생이 강사니 나와 라고 신모사 보통 맞다 저도 걸로다 나 좀 레이터 뭐가라 원들이 나오지 뭐라 쉐를 따라들이 이게 다 많은 공부하는 배로 홍제 이제 서대와요가 이제 이게 좀 탑서지 민당지 좀 탑고 이거 살때 막 드리고 들고들이 저 저거 뭐 이제 용동 탈라고 그래서 이렇게 내가 내 동법은 니버가도 또 이거 꾸를 때 정말 보고 이 남서 공터 받죠 디생하 마오다를 니 봐서 들이 이거 가지고 온 거 터졌더니 아 꽃좀 고통을 거는들이 그래서 가래 고라를 거는들이 니봐 딱 제tam 또라 대도면서 이 오늘들은 요도 전부 가래 거들이 요거 하자 먹으면 수고하다 코트 먹고는 니와니 봐서 들이 니와니 봐들 들이 자 이들이 어제 주 다들 코트 받을 거들이 어제 쪽들이 시간탄들이 초반벌 세생기던 저 바장 들이 보면 이렇게 드바서 이렇게 이렇게 생진탕지 드바장 생진탕지 살인 저 드바 들이 뭐가서 들이 드치이송 인도 이라이져서 매도 로요래 뭐 그런 게 들이 로마 같이 되나 다가서 뭐 요래 동소초라는 공고요래 얘는 같이 건다 이 건들이 매게 되는 거 예반지 봐다 이 getter를 사지 담보 니버가는 무엇이 받아요. 아니 니반지만 한 코트도 좁고 잡았다래. 들이 니반지 받아 주지들이 두바라 주지. 이 란사데 문을 좁고 닝다고 차요래. 인도 지리서 사다랑 이서 배가 란사를 줘 두고요래. 그봐 이제들이 나서만 유대제를 막은 로고를 마지막에 내가 등찍거든 이 라이저가 되는 로고에
And then it says, I imagine a radiant red Shri syllable on a moon disk at my heart. So the moon disk here, first you can visualize that very small, just like the size of your thumb fingernail. The moon disk, and on top of that small moon disk, you visualize the red Shri syllable surrounded by the Mani mantra, Mani Padme Hum. You can also visualize that at the navel. And so, in the beginning, when we first begin to visualize the syllables around the Mani syllables around the Shri, first we visualize we place each of these syllables around the Shri in our mind. So first of all, these syllables are facing outward. And in the beginning, when we go through the 4 steps of approach and accomplishment according to the old tantric system, the first step is the approach. And here we only train the mind in visualizing those syllables around the seed syllable, until that becomes stable, until that comes to mind in an instant, whenever you think of it. And so when that comes to mind, then you come to the second step, the close approach. So once those syllables are firm, you can visualize them clearly, then you can begin to circle, they begin to rotate like a wheel. So that is the close approach. And so then when that becomes stable, the slow circling, then it accelerates. Then it circles quicker and quicker until it becomes so fast that you cannot even follow it with your eyes any longer. It becomes like one circle. It spins so fast. So that's the close approach. And then the third one, the accomplishment, is that when that becomes stable and it spins very fast, then you think that from this mantra garland that spins very fast, light is radiating and gathering back. And so this light then makes offerings to the Buddhas in the Pure Lands and purifies the obscurations of sentient beings. And then when that becomes firm, then you come to the great accomplishment, and that is when then all the obscurations of sentient beings have been purified, then all beings become the deity. So in this way, we gradually progress through those 4 branches. First, we only focus on the mantra garland, the visualization of the mantra syllables. So this is how we practice the mantra garland according to the old tantric system. And so then at the same time we recite the mantra, and there is in general a certain number of mantras to be accumulated, but actually the point is not the numbers, but the point is to habituate, to train the mind in the creation stage. So this according to the old tantric system, and it is similar to the 4 classes of tantra in the new tantric system. For example, according to the old tantric system here, when we come to the first step, the approach where we visualize just the seed syllables, that is when we just begin to familiarize ourselves with the deity. Then when the mantra slowly begins to circle in the close approach, this is where we become like friends with the deity. And then we come to the accomplishment where the light rays are radiating and gathering back from the circling mantra garland. And so that is when the deity becomes like a very dear, loving friend, very dear to your heart. And then in the 4th, the great accomplishment, when you realize non-duality, then you have become the deity. You realize, actually, I am the deity. According to the old tantric system, this is how we practice a single mantra garland in those 4 steps. And then, so it says, so the red tree at the heart with the 6 syllables revolving around its edge, light radiates from, inviting the intrinsic wisdom beings who merge into me. So then this light invites the wisdom beings, the assembly of deities who descend down from space like raindrops falling down, and think that they dissolve into the entire universe and all sentient beings. And then there are some Sanskrit syllables, some mantras, and actually these actually represent, it's kind of like a summary of all the visualizations. So they represent what has been said before and also what comes after in like English or Tibetan. That is summarized here in these Sanskrit syllables. It says first Om Mani Padme Hum Shri, so this is the essence of the deity. And then Benza Vajra Samaya Cha, So that is the samaya is that is our samaya. So because the deities have a samaya, so what it means here, vacha samaya cha, if I supplicate you, you must come because it is your samaya. So it is because the deities have first given rise to bodhicitta and then have finally attained perfect and complete enlightenment and have taken a commitment to benefit sentient beings. So they have said those words of commitment, I will benefit sentient beings. So now I am invoking this samaya, that the commitment that they have taken. I invite you, so please follow your commitment. I am suffering, therefore come here and protect me. Follow your samaya. So it is a two-way samaya. It is my samaya to my commitment to practice and to supplicate, and then following that supplication, it is your samaya to come and help me. So then the deities will certainly come because it is their samaya. So that's vacha samaya cha. And then cha hu bam ho, on the outer level, that represents the four immeasurables. On the inner level, the four joys, as you just mentioned before, the union of the yab and the yum. And then ultimately, the yab and the yum dissolve, become non-dual, which becomes like the ultimate offering of great joy to the deity. So it represents the final merging into non-duality, the Tsahung Bam Ho. And then Vacha Samaya Tishta Len, that is, it is my samaya. I will never forget about the deity. I will never separate my mind from the deity. And then Omahung is that the enlightened body, speech, and mind of the deity and my own body, speech, and mind have become indivisible. That is, the self-grasping, the ice of my self-grasping has melted, and therefore my body, speech, and mind have become that of the deity. So that means the body becomes appearing yet empty, the speech sound and empty, heard yet empty, and the mind aware but empty. There is, I appear in the form of the deity that lacks any inherent substantial existence, that appears just like a rainbow in the sky. And then it says, Om Hum Dram Shri A. So those are 5 syllables here, represent the transformation of one's 5 afflictions. Through the power of emptiness and compassion, the 5 afflictions have now transformed into the 5 wisdoms, which is also represented by the crown ornament of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas in the Abhyam aspect, which is the outer symbol. And so then next, again, I imagine that from the blessings of body, speech, and mind, the 5 wisdoms empowerment has been conferred, and so on. So this is just actually, as we have mentioned before, with the light radiating and gathering back and benefiting beings. So since we already explained that, there's no need to explain this again. It is very clear here in the text.
근데 이 시간 왕거서 아토소 세력의 다리 니바 좀 꼬문데 니바지 이렇게 고 어제 판투자와 토소 세력의 어제 판투자와 조제 말고 열와 미샵들도 등등 토소 세력 이도 용도 고발서 뭐 많은 게 뭐 샵들도 이 용도 고바데 용도 고지 바데 고공들이 용도 고자래 인공 설득이나 인공 설득이 오마메베메 홍 설득으로라 그 용도 고데 용도 고바는 거기에서 걸어버려 대하고 그러면 나 용도 걸고 와서 이거 설득되는 게 용도 고데에서 걸어지 사실 용도 걸고들이 양 용은 망르지 보면 예서 고대 용도 걸데 용도 고대 예서 걸데 능게도 용골로 보는 거기도 용도 보고 예수로 보고 해야 돼. 지금 코바르들이 딱 어제 좀 있다니 니와니 받아 드바 니와니 받아 드바 카드 이제 트위터 보여라 하고서
So then, derva avisa pato deva churva. Nige tela lepso. Nige tela lepso.
어제 반주 자와도 들어. 우르도 잘도 거기. 네.
아, 올라데.
이것도 야야. 우르들이 데들 나오는들이 니 코롱들이 어제 반주.
단다 하고 성화 비차 가바독시다 하고 뭐도 이거 좀 맞어.
나 토기.
나타라 올라요. 디마르 연독 거.
나는 어제 주문하고 이거 뭐라.
이 올라도라.
이거 오전들하고 어제들이 주지라고 와.
뭐야?
또 너희들은 야자고.
So then, just read through it quickly. From the life force, the letter Shri at my heart, light rays have streamed forth, offering to the victors and refining away all sentient ones, wrongs and obscurations. Thus all have transformed into the great compassionate one. As the light rays have gathered back, the quintessence, blessings and cities of body, speech and mind merge into me. I imagine the 6 syllables arranged anti-clockwise around the life force, the heart letter Shri, which is concentration. So here the order is, according to the text, there's first a light rays radiating, and then in the very end it says the 6 syllables arranged anti-clockwise around the letter Shri. Actually, when it comes to real practice, first we arrange the seed syllables around the Shri, then it spins, and then the light radiates. So that's the actual order now when we go through those 4 steps. Coming to the last line here, arranged anti-clockwise. So in this visualization, so you have the Om in the center, the Shri in the center, and then arranged anti-clockwise means first when you visualize in the first step, the approach, you visualize each of those syllables. You arrange them around the Shri. So when you arrange the syllables, then first of all they face outward, and then they are arranged anti-clockwise, to the left, anti-clockwise around the Shri. And then once they are arranged, and so actually you would have starting with the Om in front, and then you go around Om Mani Padme Hum, around like this. And so then once you have arranged it counterclockwise, anti-clockwise, in the next step of close approach, when it begins to circle, it actually circles clockwise. So you visualize putting them, you read them counterclockwise, but then when it circles clockwise. So there's some other visualizations in different practices. There are visualizations where it's the other way around, where we read the letters, they are arranged clockwise, like in a clockwise way, and then it circles counterclockwise. And in that visualizations, the syllables facing inward. So here in this visualization again, they're facing outward. We read them counterclockwise, so the syllables are arranged counterclockwise to the left, and then when it circles, when we then come to the light radiating and so on, and when it circles clockwise.
아다미리 유라라니 페트 삼대 경제구나 아니 제가 소남 예 내도들 해야돼 서바치고 차오나 벌써 삼 유라 삼경제 어디 맞지람지 서바치고 차 영어 요래 이거 나타 받치 당이 용도로 요래 저 조반도 예제 오 체는 뭐 딱하고 보면 봐 세면도 계시다면 게 그러게 토고요 말 저도 보면 예 이렇게 되는 일들이 rangasabati botoboya mambo na wanga that they made sense of what they no bataniona de kale to bocha over it drabi no di abdelam yi shadow leg jet the cotton to you good the leg jet and today or good you tawa de kale someone who get you body sabat me but I can get me ba sabat I can get you 아마도 hingi the problem that you got on to you to your head. Like you carry some hingi the dodo jung like mango zongo couple your head. So send the people to you say what you know, oh, then they love same it. Then they to water mato your mother with someone they were doing like in the assembly, they happen. They say what something the young they by your. It's archibald that. It is Jimazuba to your head. Donna Slanya make and something to go it. This Zuba Tapoja to go it. Then we don't need it, you talk to your head. Then Metadelatin said that you was some of the one they are told all your head. Littering the man, Narotan, Sanjo, Mitoja, Srodi, Sancho, Jegore, Hatan go to the Monan Periore. The Taman Namjo, the other logo. The Kashian Keprigan, Nang Yo, by your logo. 알아 something learning so the mother was on one nam combat law 이제
So here then it says as the light rays get us back, the quintessence, blessings and cities of body, speech and mind merge into me. So what is this this quintessence and the cities, the quintessence, blessings and city that merge into me? So the actual city and the blessings that merge into me is love and compassion. So what we want to get from the deity is love and compassion. We want to cultivate love and compassion. And so that is what will, if there's love and compassion in your heart, that is what will bring all happiness. So that is what will increase life and merit and wealth and so on. And that is what will pacify illness, evil spirits, obscurations, and so on. And whoever possesses love and compassion will always be happy. Their illness and obstacles will be lesser. So their life and merit will increase. For example, when life increases, for example, is that their hair will not grow white, so they will not age. They will not age so much, so they will always be happy. So they will have many friends and so on. So a person who has a good heart will have many friends, and even their enemies and their harm doers, obstructors, will slowly also become their friends. So the quintessence that is accomplished are really the four enlightened activities of the deity. So these are the quintessence. And the root of that is love and compassion. It is immeasurable love and immeasurable compassion. So that is what we want to get from the deity. That is the quintessence, the blessings of the deity's body, speech, and mind. So we can elaborate much on that, on the various blessings and cities and so on. But in brief, in essence, the quintessence to get is love and compassion. For example, if love arises towards your friend, and that love is the mind of the deity, but then you should think that all beings have been such a friend to me, and that is really the mind of Chenrezig. So we should consider this mind of love and compassion again and again. Really put your faith and all your trust into this mind of love, and protect this love with patience. So when you practice the deity, you need to practice the deity by cultivating the mind of love and patience. And this is when that arises, and this is the attainment of the deity's cities, all the accomplishments. This will lead to happiness in this life, and you will move from happiness to happiness in future lives. So now we will stop the instructions here. We break for lunch, and in the afternoon we will do a purification ritual. And also bring your Samantabhadra prayer books that I offered to you yesterday. We will read that together later in the afternoon. Actually, often when people receive these booklets, they take them and then they just leave them at home. But actually you should not leave them at home. You should always bring them with you wherever you go, especially the 37 Bodhisattva practices and the Samantabhadra prayer. You always need to have them with you to read them. So you should always just leave them in your bag so you have them with you.